Welcome to Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and this is where characters gather. Second time I'm recording this video this morning. First time I forgot to put on my mic, and you couldn't hear a word. So, it's the way Mondays go, I guess. So let's talk about the books I read this week. I read 7 books. Of those 7 books, I finished 2. So let's talk about the books on my Kindle first. First up would be Absolutely Not in Love by Jenny Proctor. 7th and final book in the Sweater Weather series. DNF this one 15% in, has yet another female protagonist who cannot let go of what happened to her in her childhood, and thus she avoids it like the plague as an adult. Just didn't have the patience, didn't want to hear about it. I could care less that your parents took your brother to hockey matches and made you go when you were little, and thus all things hockey are verboten in your life. Good for you. Congratulations. You're a child. I normally like Jenny Proctor books, but I wasn't going to read that this weekend. So, DNF that one. Now, for the others that I DNF this week, I need my calendar here for a minute because one just flew out of my head. Okay, so the next 3 are all NetGalley arcs, and here is my honest review in exchange for the arc. They were all horrible. So let's talk about why they were all horrible individually. First up, A Pie to Die For by Gretchen Rue. This is the first book in the Split Pine series. It is a cozy mystery. I read 50% through this book. Writing was fine. Characters were fine. She runs a diner on Split Pine Island in Michigan. And that was all fine. The reason I DNF'd the book and wanted to fling my Kindle against the wall were the endless pages of how to make a pie crust in the middle of a cozy mystery. Not at the end with the recipes, but the pages in the middle of the book about how to make a pie. I'm sorry. I already know how to make a pie. I don't need how to make a pie filler in the middle of my cozy mystery. If you want to share that information, put it in the recipe section at the back. And I'm not going to suddenly stumble upon a cozy mystery because it might tell me how to make a pie crust. I was so frustrated. It was so frustrated that I was done. So, that got DNF'd. These are in no particular order, by the way. Next DNF was so disappointing. DNF this one 15-20% through. To Spark a Match by Jen Turano. Second in the Matchmaker series. I loved the first book, A Match in the Making, that released earlier this year. It was brilliant and funny and witty and charming and had action and characters, and this book has none of that. Endless conversation. No, seriously. Just endless, pointless conversation about nothing. That's how the book opens up. That's how chapter 2 goes. Chapter 3 goes. And there are a couple of Adelaide-related incidents in those chapters. One is funny out of all of them. The rest of them are ludicrous and irritating, and the talking never stops. And they're saying nothing. Literally, this book felt forced. It resorted to 5-year-old boy humor in the beginning. This should have been a great book. Adelaide was a great character in A Match in the Making. And in this book, she is not. And none of the characters I encountered were worth my time. And I was just so incredibly let down that, yeah, DNF'd it. It's very bad. It really is. It's very, very bad. So next up is the infamous Julia Monroe Begins Again by Rebekah Millet. I'd started this a while ago. It wasn't working for me. I kind of sort of soft DNF'd it. I didn't even write it down on my calendar that I sort of soft DNF'd it. Picked it up again this week. It's definitely a DNF now. Oshina and Amanda have recently reviewed it. I will link their videos and channels down below. This 40-year-old woman is incredibly petty, incredibly immature, and incredibly narcissistic. Just gonna say it. Book opens up. She's going to church with her best friend. Okay, that's fine. She gets in church and she sees her ex. And she thinks to herself, why is he in my church? This is my church. He can't be here. Okay, first of all, it's not your church. It's God's house, not yours. And I was unaware there was a sign on the front of the church that said, Julia Monroe worships here and the following people cannot. Oh, so incredibly petty. So incredibly immature. Vindictive. I told myself to push through. Maybe it got better. So she then goes to her mother's house. Mind you, she's a 40-something-year-old woman. She's been married. She's widowed. She has grown children who are in college in North Carolina. She lives in Louisiana. She goes to her mother's house, shares the church bulletin with her mother, tells her mom that her ex is now a member of the church. Her mom goes off, and Julia just kind of takes it, agrees with her mother, and is so weak-willed and just agrees with her mama. You know, I'm sorry, you're 40 and you do exactly what your mother tells you to do? Oh, I was done. I could care less. If you are that insecure and petty and immature at 40, I have better things to do with my time than to read about it. The writing was okay, but I am not motivated to try another Rebekah Millet book again. And to be honest, I am surprised it was published by a Christian publishing house, because it was just offensive. It really was. It was offensive. That's the best I can say. It was offensive. So the last book I DNF'd this week, I read 213 pages out of 304. That would be A Solitude of Wolverines by Alice Henderson. It's the first in the Alex Carter series. Starts off strong. It starts off thrilling. This was a Goodreads giveaway that I won way back in 2020, and I hadn't had a chance to read yet. It is atrocious. It just really is. Seriously, the book starts off strong. It has action in the first couple of chapters. She's a decisive character, and that all just dissipates. And she becomes a battered woman who occasionally sticks up for herself, but as soon as her boyfriend, by the way, they've been on a break since the beginning of the book, shows up, she just crumbles. And I have so many issues with this book. So, book starts off in Boston. Events happen in Boston. She gets a job offer to go to Montana. She takes the job offer, and it's her dream job. So that's all well and good. Weird things start happening at the abandoned ski resort where her job is, and her boyfriend shows up out of the blue in the middle of the night, and she just kind of accepts it, even though he's belittling and mocking and trying to get her to take a job she never expressed any interest or desire in Boston because it'll be better for him. And she just kind of puts up with it. And then he leaves in a huff in the middle of the night. She goes back to sleep, and then she hears noises downstairs and thinks he's returned. No, it turns out it's an emaciated, starving, injured mountain lion. And she's come downstairs without a weapon, without bear spray. She's come downstairs completely unarmed. And she somehow manages to get this starving, emaciated, very angry predator locked in the basement all by herself in her jammies in the middle of nowhere. That happens about halfway through the book. I am frustrated at this point beyond words. I'm frustrated. But I push on. It'll get better. Doesn't get better. It really doesn't. The depiction of the residents of the small town where she has to go to get supplies is offensive. The climate politics is offensive. And the reason I put the book down at page 213 is that in the middle of November in the Montana mountains near the Canadian border, she stumbles across a gorilla. That's right, a gorilla. Who's, starving and hungry and emaciated. And she's eating at the time she stumbles across said gorilla. And she makes friends with the gorilla. I was done. I'm done. Seriously. You're gonna write me a book about climate politics and make it a thriller and then set it in Montana and have gorillas. No, you are not. Just, you have zero logic, and I am done. So, DNF that puppy. It was not a great reading week for Tammy. 5 DNFs is a lot, even for me. And I was really in danger of a reading slump. I had one really good read, and then I tried to read a Solitude of Wolverines, and it was just pushing me into a slump. I could feel that urge. I almost picked up a Hannah Swenson, which, as you know, is my go-to when slumps occur. Instead, I picked up a library book. That was Death of a Showman. I read this yesterday. It is the 4th book in the Jane Prescott series. I accidentally skipped book 3, which is Death of an American Beauty. I have the arc for book 5. I just got approved for it last week, so I needed to read this. Am I upset that I skipped to book 3. I am. Did it impact my enjoyment ability of book 4? It did not. So, book 4 opens. Jane and the family she works for are returning from Europe. It's 1914 in the summer. And Louise gets involved with helping to finance a Broadway show. So Jane ends up going to the theater with Louise every day. Producer is murdered. Jane solves it. It was enjoyable. It is familiar characters. It is clean. It is just a reliable, historical, cozy mystery that lets the reader forget themselves and just read a good book, which is all I really needed. And it prevented the slump. And I will go back and read book 3. Probably going to read the arc for book 5 this week. These are easy recommendations. And at the very end of this one, the opening shots of World War I have occurred. So it's easy to place on the timeline of history. So what was the book of the week? Which is not something I rarely do. It was unexpected. I almost told this was a whole library hold for me, and I almost released the hold when I went to check it out. I'm so glad I didn't. It was Fourth Wing by Rebekah Yarros. This book has been all over social media. It has been widely read. The whole time I was reading it Thursday and Friday, Dave kept calling it dragon porn. It is about horny dragons to some extent. There are language warning. There is language in this book. There is spice in this book, but it doesn't occur until about 3/4 of the way through. And it's not consistent that last 25%. It is a dark academia fantasy. And there is magic, but it's not like wizards slinging spells. Our characters are in their early 20s, militarily. There are 4 schools in the military, and everybody goes to one. And our main character is Violet, and her entire life she thought she was going to go to scribe school, which are the historians for this universe. But at the last, right before, commitment day, her mother's like, nope, you're going to writer school, and if you try to go to scribe school, I will pull you out and shove you back in writer school. Her mom is very high up in the military, so she has the power to do so. Violet resigns herself and goes to writer school. And Violet has a medical condition which is never explained. She is fragile. She breaks bones easily. She sprains easily, bruises easily. So it was never thought possible that she would go to writer school. Most people do not survive writer school, and the purpose of writer school is to bond with a dragon so you can ride a dragon into battle. There are always more candidates to bond with a dragon than there are dragons willing to bond with humans. And I really expected to hate this book. I almost stopped. Third paragraph is the first cuss word. And I was tempted, but I kept reading. I'm so glad I did. I truly love this book. I am probably pre-ordering book 2, which releases November 7th. That is Iron Flame. Seriously, this book was amazing. it is, I don't, you know, Dark Academia can be very cringy and very whiny, and this was not that. Violet is by far the weakest candidate in writer school for her year. There's 3 years. She's a first year. And it is a kill or be killed environment, trying to get to the end. And Violet recognizes her own weaknesses and finds ways to survive the experience. And it is so refreshing. There is no angst. There is no woe is me. How horrible is my mother? There is none of that. Instead, there is a strong female lead that does the unexpected and succeeds at doing so. Seriously, I couldn't put the book down. I really couldn't put the book down. I started it Thursday. I finished it Friday. It's 500 pages of just joy. So that first 75% of the book, there are some mentions of spice, but there is nothing on page. There may be some kissing, there may be some longing, other side characters, you know, things are mentioned, but it is only mentioned. There is no detail whatsoever. It is all off page. That last 25%, there is detail. It is open door. It is steamy. I'm not going to lie to you. It is steamy. However, it isn't there for the sake of being there. It is actually there because it is a necessary plot device. It truly is. The book would not work if you removed those scenes. It would not work. It would not work anywhere near as well. And I'm surprised I'm saying that, but it's honestly true. The book would not be as successful if you took that out. This is probably not going to appeal to male readers. It is definitely a fantasy romance. There's no sugarcoating that. That is exactly what this is. There are lots of twists and turns and unexpected events happening throughout this book, and right at the very end, I was sort of expecting the ending, but I was still shocked when it occurred. Seriously, I am so glad I didn't return this hold unread. It is fabulous. It truly is. It's fabulous. It released this year. Book 2 is releasing this year. I hope the release pace continues. It's anticipated to be a 5-book series, so if it's 2 books a year, it will conclude in 2025. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to lie. Right now, seriously, it was amazingly good. I can honestly say it's worth reading. It really is. The writing is good. The story is good. The twists are good. The politics are good. The lore is good. Everything's good. And the spice isn't gratuitous. It's not there to sell the book. It's there because the plot requires it. So what am I going to read this week? I'm probably going to pick up The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey. This should be a quick read for me. I keep, notice I keep saying that. I need just to sit down and read this book so I can say I've read this book. And I am definitely on fantasy kick, so I will probably pick up The Labyrinth of Scions and Sorceries, which is book 2 in the Risen Kingdom series. I loved book 1. I will link that video review down below. Yeah. And I still need to read my 4 sections for Texas this month, so I need to do that because I'm rapidly running out of time. What are you reading this week? Did you read anything great last week? Leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.